Good patrons, no news on the missing shipment as of yet, but we can at last reveal the shipping manifest courtesy of Dr. Grodbort's Plant B. Based on Venus, Plant B is responsible for producing much of our high-end weaponry, compressed aether munitions, armored fighting vehicles, and novelty costuming. The plant is now on maximum whipping status in an effort to refill the order. We hate to be forced to such measures, but for Dr. Grodbort, customers come first. And besides, Venusian workers love a good whipping. It's hard to tell through their silly-looking tentacle faces whether they're smiling or not, but our scientists can assure us that it is not impossible. Sadly, some of our items may never see the light of day due to critical design documents being sent on board. On top of that, the original designer of the Cow Mangler 5000 threw himself quite literally into the project by signing the wrong forms during the prototype testing phase. He thought he was signing a liability waiver, but went and popped himself into the large volume hobo-mangling tests, and although he protested upon discovering his error, a signature is a signature, and we do like to stick to the letter of law here at Dr. Grodbort's. He leaves behind a wife, 2 children, and a very messy desk. All that means that it is very unlikely that we will be able to reproduce this extremely powerful weapon system. Reports from the last known whereabouts of the rocket show no debris nor signs of destruction, so a hole in the very fabric of space may be the culprit. We hold our breath, therefore, that the rocket appears again. Stay tuned.
If you like what we do here, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to stay notified. It really helps, and it helps keep you notified of when we upload. Thank you, and on to the rest of the video. In recent videos, there are a lot of classes that I've neglected. Engineer, Soldier, Pyro. But the truth is, a lot of those classes, I'm just running out of things to talk about. I mean, Engineer was a large part of my back catalog, and I only have, like, 5 weapons that I haven't discussed at all for the Engineer. Pyro, in the time that I have dedicated to him to have a fair opinion on him prior to writing the script, he was no fun. I hated it. And with Soldier, I'm just not very good. But when it comes to Engineer, his class, his items, they're all my favorite. They're the ones that I play with the most, and they're the ones that are the most recognizable and distinguishable to me. So, today we're just going to bite the bullet. We're going to cover all the weapons that I haven't done. The Rescue Ranger, the Southern Hospitality, the Jag, the Wrangler, all of them. We're going to cover everything that I haven't touched upon yet. So, without further ado, my name's Cody, and I'm here to ask one simple question, and hopefully get one simple answer. What the hell was that? Well, that's the first time that a package has ever literally exploded onto my doorstep before. It's also the first time that a camera's been on my doorstep. What are you doing here? Well, get out! Alright, so I guess somebody wants me to take a look at these weapons. I don't know who the hell a Dr. Grodbort is, but he sent me a bunch of fucking laser weapons, so he's cool in my book. Just taking a look at what's in the box here, I mean, I guess we'll just pick one. I mean, I can't do that one. That's a Righteous Bison. That's not an engineer weapon. Holy shit, it's a...
The Pomson 6000 has an exemplary history. Dr. Grodbort's subatomic wave gun, the Pomson 6000, in its base form, had such extravagant features as draining the electrical charge of our enemy's appliances. Invisibility and invulnerability mean nothing to a man of stature like you, loyal customer. While, yes, we had to scale back as our enemies complained we did not abide by intergalactic law and had projectiles weakened the further they travel, but in return, we are able to make it deal much more damage up close. A win-win, as they say.
The Pomson 6000 has stats reflecting a playstyle of denying both spies and medics from doing what they do best, going invisible and Ubering respectively. Spies can lose up to 20% of their cloak, and medics can lose up to 10% Uber charge, with losses decreasing starting at 512 hammer units, completely depleting to 0 on both ends at 1,536 hammer units. The Pomson also deals 80% less damage to buildings, only dealing 20%. It doesn't require ammo, and the projectile can't be deflected. And additionally, there are 2 missing stats. It has a minus 34% clip size and a minus 22% fire rate. Its stats reflect a playstyle that kind of makes you, well, I mean, if you use it, you'd probably do well, but sapping other players dry of their various charges is...
You can play as the vile Kandarian demon itself. But who would want to do that? He'd be a dick.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce Campbell. I think that clears it up. The Pomson isn't generally known for being the best primary for Engineer, especially when considering that the Rescue Ranger, Frontier Justice, and Widowmaker really give it a run for its money. Each of these primaries provides some kind of new ability or utility to the Engineer that's far better than what the Pomson provides. Yes, draining Cloak and Uber might sound useful until you realize just how rough hitting shots with this thing is in general. It's a laser weapon, and of course the laser moves much slower than the shotguns that Engineer likes to make use of. The projectile moves half as fast as the Rescue Ranger's repair bolt. I found using it that I would often miss shots because when it travels as slow as it does, dodging is not hard when you see the thing coming from a mile away. This would ideally make the Pomson a long-range weapon, but with its diminishing returns over distance, you can't even use it in that sense. Considering that, it's not hard to see why people generally don't hold it in very high regard. When you do make use of it, you're probably going to be robbing someone of hard-earned Uber with the click of a button, but most of the time, realistically, you can't. And in the situation where you'd use a primary, self-defense, you'd want something with a little more reliability, and given that the projectile doesn't even fire on par with your reticle, it's hard to see any kind of reliability in this thing. When the Pomson does successfully drain Cloak or Uber from an enemy, a sound plays to alert both the victim and attacker know that it's happened. And while you'd think reasonably that maybe this is the anti-Dead Ringer weapon, the drainage is applied after damage is dealt, so the Dead Ringer will still trigger, though the spy will have less time to work with their escape. If you can make it work, I found that the Pomson pairs well with the short circuit. You're able to slightly deny practically any threat for some amount of time, and sometimes that small amount of time is all you need. The Pomson can occasionally drain a medic just enough for a sentry gun to take them and their target out. Spies will have less cloak to work with, soldiers and demos will have a hard time hitting your sentry gun, and failing that, you could just teleport away. Oh wait, I haven't spoken about that part yet. Just ignore it. Just forget I said anything. Secondary weapons, I'd probably recommend Wrangler or Pistol if you want reliable hit scan. Sure, the Wrangler is reliant on building a sentry, but if you're not building Engineer's main building, why are you playing Engineer? See, the short circuit is good with the Pomson, but the thing is, with using that, you won't have any good damage output that isn't a slow projectile or metal reliant. You'll chew through a lot of metal attempting to use the short circuit, and it doesn't deal an awful lot of damage, and at long ranges, it's useless. I mean, 10 damage per shock is good, but it's not that good. The Pistol and the Wrangler could be better choices if you do need that damage output. And the Pomson isn't bad itself, but it's got a very steep learning curve. You need to be able to lead projectiles somewhat effectively, and you will definitely miss more shots than you hit for most of your playtime. But the other options are just better. I mean, healing buildings from afar is better, recovering metal for every shot is better, crits for destroyed sentries is better, but the Pomson does shine at housing a turtle playstyle, and proper secondary and melee pairings give you a defensive powerhouse which will probably piss off the enemy, but I know you, and you're okay with that. Of course, when talking about proper melee pairing, there are a lot of options. The Jag will make repairs and building easier. The Southern Hospitality is that nice topping of fuck you to spies who do manage to cloak. I wouldn't consider the Gunslinger because that's more for in-your-face disposability, but a Combat Engineer playstyle isn't bad either. In fact, many consider the Pomson Gunslinger combo to be the absolute highest form of torture that one could dish out. I've never understood why, but I'm not the smartest guy I know either. Yes, there are options here for the Pomson to be good, but if you're asking me to aid in the turtle playstyle, there's only one wrench that offers a certain ability and aesthetic match. The
Wrenchmotron 6000, informally known as the Eureka Effect by the lower class, once had the ability to sap your body's natural energies to allow for instantaneous teleportation. Unfortunately, due to this, you were unable to do much more. After many years of debate, we at Dr. Groordbort's altered it to be more efficient and only sap 75% of your body's energies to teleport to 2 different locations and allow for lifting things once more. Unfortunately, again, this made its repair and upgrade abilities halved. You could still accomplish tasks, but needed double the material. Once more, after much blowback by our loyal customers, previous penalties have been removed. Unfortunately, due to intergalactic law, we had to make it much larger, meaning you can no longer carry as much material as before, and construction was severely impacted. But we fixed it. For you, loyal customers' blind brand loyalty, we decreased its size by 30%, allowing you to carry that much more material as before, and your teleportation devices no longer require half as much material to build and repair. It also harnesses the power of thunderstorms now, instead of its users' energy, to make for a far better tool. Disclaimer, that last sentence is marketing babble, and is not true.
The Eureka Effect is an interesting weapon because it has some unique abilities. You're able to teleport to either spawn or your teleporter exit, which, might I add, costs 50% less across the board, meaning that they only cost 225 metal to get to level 3, as opposed to the 450 that you would normally need. That's just considering one teleporter. It will cost a little more if you build a second. On the downsides, you no longer pick up full metal from ammo packs. You'll pick up only 80% of an ammo pack's normal rate, and the construction boost from hitting buildings while they deploy is halved by 50%. The Eureka Effect is effectively a nest management and support wrench first and foremost. The ability to go back to spawn and build in a safe environment, it's a good ability to have, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The Eureka Effect has a multitude of uses, incentivizing building a teleporter not just for yourself, but for your teammates. Not even mentioning that you can use that teleporter without affecting the recharge times for any teammates that might be waiting to use it. Sure, construction boosting might be less viable, but once the building is built, keeping it up can be as easy as pie. All of this is, again, not considering that the entrance to the teleporter doesn't need to be built, which leads to a playstyle that centers around putting buildings and yourself into places that the enemy wouldn't traditionally expect. The Ninjaneer is a respected species in most wildlife reserves. If your dispenser is out of metal, just go back to spawn and come back during downtime between pushes. If the enemy is gaining ground, just teleport away. I mean, the Eureka Effect can almost be a get-out-of-jail-free card if you really grasp how to use it right, and a couple of binds can really help streamline that process. It can help with that so much, in fact, that the Eureka Effect and the Jag can have a very unique setup rollout. See, the Jag provides building speed buffs, and the Eureka Effect provides teleportation back to spawn or teleporter exits. And if you know what you're doing, you can get 2 or even all 3 buildings to level 3 before the clock runs out. The Eureka Effect can be used to go back to spawn and grab those buildings and deliver them to the front lines where they're needed, while switching to the Jag to construct them. It's a little more complicated than I'm making it sound, and I won't go into all of the details here, but if you're interested, check out this video from Uncle Dane, who really popularized the rollout. It's interesting, and mastering it will make you a much better engineer. The Eureka Effect pairs well with the previously spoken about Pomson and Short Circuit because it provides that teleportation to a consistent, reliable metal source for refueling. Dispensers are nice, but they can run out of metal, and they take a pretty good while to restock. The Short Circuit alone chews through the metal reserves fairly fast, so using the setup can be pretty metal reliant, deleting projectiles and protecting your baby. Given that the Eureka Effect is just a wrench, any primary or secondary will work fairly well. Sure, the Pomson and Short Circuit pair well with it for a turtle playstyle. Other primaries work just as well: Frontier Justice, Rescue Ranger, Widowmaker, all viable for the Ninjaneer. Offensive choices include the Widowmaker and the Frontier Justice. You won't be able to use mini-sentries, but if you insist on trying to be offensive with it, at least be prepared. The Rescue Ranger these days is really the only top choice for tanky defensive playstyles, but the Widowmaker's metal recovery attribute makes that very viable too, with the occasional switch to the Frontier Justice for between life down to sentries. The Eureka Effect in many other scenarios is not all that viable. If you're not utilizing that teleportation, the construction speed penalty makes it hard to warrant using, though I suppose it's still a step up from the old design. There was a contact email in the box that I got, so I hit it up and got into contact with one Greg Broadmoor. We spoke back and forth, and I got enough here for an interview video, so I'll be posting that soon. He's the designer of the weapons and mind behind the Dr. Grodbort weapons, and a lot came to light about their design, and I hope to be able to shine a light on a lot of the mystery behind them soon. Something that he informed me of is that there was quite a bit of unused content, and a lot of it has been shared online and is featured in their own Wikipedia articles. But Mr. Broadmoor was kind enough to give me some concept art of things that have never been revealed before in any official capacity. There are a few straggling areas where I did find it floating around, but it seems like the community at large is unaware that this ever existed. Sam Greer has posted it online in their portfolio, and you may have seen it, but I'm betting you haven't. I want it known that I frequently reach out to people when I talk about maps or weapons made by those people, and usually the inquiry is ignored. Or I get an "I don't have time," or I'm greeted with hostility and defensiveness. So the fact that Greg Broadmoor was kind enough to respond so quickly, answer not just my questions, but a lot of yours, and give me loads of new, never-before-seen content means so much to me. So with all that out of the way, I just want to thank you again, Mr. Broadmoor, for participating in my stupid little YouTube show. It means the world to me. Without any further ado, the Gathalion Automated Death Ray. Really, there's not a lot to talk about other than the picture. It was supposedly modeled and intended to be included in the Engineer Pack at one time, and why it wasn't included, Broadmoor assumes it was too complex. I'm not clear if it had new stats or if it was a mere model swap, but he notes that the balance of TF2 was a finely tuned thing, and around then was when the shift became more toward cosmetic items rather than new weapons. And he says that he never got an official answer on why some of it wasn't included. Other unused, unseen content extends to a Demoman bottle reskin and a few hats, one of them even being all class. These are all wonderfully retro sci-fi, just as you'd expect, and with all of that, I think that's really all I have to talk about. I know it seems like I said every weapon in the Engineer's arsenal is useful with the Pomson and the Eureka Effect, and I'm not arguing that that summarization isn't untrue, but just as any other class does, you need to account for the situation that you're in. Not every weapon is going to be useful in all situations. The Pomson isn't the best on its own, and the Eureka Effect does well in most turtle situations. And on the plus side, they do pair well together, unlike some other item set items. And with the right secondary, they're wonderful. Adding a whole new playstyle isn't something that every item can do, and while you might be a dick for doing that on its own or otherwise, every item in this game, I believe, does have a use. Whether it's obscure or situational, every item can be used to some extent in some situation, even if it is once in a blue moon. I've got no shortage of Droidwort weapons, so next time I guess we'll take a look at Soldier, and conclude with, yeah, whatever that thing is. That's all for now. Show's over.